Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Laughing Place Movie Club. It's been a while since we've gotten our X crew together, and obviously we are a couple members short
Yeah,
tonight.
this one's called X-Men United, and we are far from it.
It is X2 though, so we got that
Yeah,
going for us.
yeah, the two of us. Yeah, that's true. And you know what? I feel like we've watched so many X-Men movies for this, but we still haven't even come close to doing them all, which is
Yeah,
just goes to show how many there are.
and we've been going in kind of a crazy order, so I was going to
Yeah,
say Last Stand, what would be next, but who knows? Maybe Dark Phoenix, I don't know.
yeah.
Um,
First
so
Class we haven't done.
First Class too, yeah. Uh, So, like you said, we've done all these other X Men movies, and kind of throughout all of these, I think a lot of us were saying X2 was our favorite one. Now that you've rewatched it, do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I did call this one my favorite for a long, long time, and I do. I will say that having just watched it like an hour ago, I think it's the most consistent in tone through the whole movie. But I don't know. I was a little underwhelmed by it. I think it's a little slow. I don't know. Maybe that's just in comparison to like more recent superhero blockbusters that have a lot more jam packed into its running time. This is like this movie takes place in like two locations, which is crazy.
Yeah, it really is very limited in terms of the space it uses.
Yeah.
That's fair too. Like you said, it is kind of slow. I think, especially compared to the other X Men movies, especially like the more recent ones. We did Days of Future Past, we did Apocalypse, and it does feel like there's more action and just a quicker pace to those movies. I do still think though that this is definitely in the top. If not my
Yeah.
favorite, it's up there with Days of Future Past. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
I
has all the strengths of the first one without any of the goofy stuff from the first one. I think that's what really makes it succeed to me.
yeah, I would agree with that. And it's funny because I think if I hadn't seen any of the X Men movies prior, and you laid out all the plots and all the stories for these movies, this is probably the one I'd be the least excited for.
Yeah.
It's like the last on my list. If you told me like, oh, there's going to be one with Apocalypse, they're going to do Days of Future Past, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up for those. I'd be a little bit confused as to why two of them were about Phoenix, but I'd still sign up for those too. Um, but
it
yeah,
also it also has one of my least favorite superhero movie tropes, and that's when the hero is a villain because they're under mind control. And I had forgotten that that was in this movie, but the way they handle it, it's like a little bit more subtle than you usually see it.
Yeah,
I think.
it's not so blatantly done, but it is used quite a bit. I mean, Nightcrawler is used, Cyclops is used, and then obviously Charles is used in a big way.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nightcrawler, this was the introduction of like his introduction to this X universe. I thought the character looked great. I thought they did a really good job with him. We talked about the movie being slow, but it opens up with a pretty awesome action sequence with him attacking the president. Did you have any thoughts on the character? Were
Yeah,
you
I think
familiar with Nightcrawler before?
just from the cartoon mostly.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, I didn't read a lot of X Men comics growing up, so I knew him from the cartoon. And I think Alan Cumming is a really good actor, and he was a great choice for that role. Uh, I think I read something recently that he chose not to return later because he had such a bad time on set, but
Oh wow.
which is a shame because I thought he was really good as Nightcrawler. Um, but yeah, it's a fun way to introduce that character, and I just remember everybody when we saw this in the theater. I remember everybody having a really positive reaction to Nightcrawler specifically.
Yeah, I was gonna say he appears to get shot in the back, but it doesn't affect him at all because he is invincible. Um, Little James Bond reference for you guys. Um, so also my issue with that whole opening sequence though is this is the second X-Men movie, right? There was already a huge attack in New York. How does the president not have better anti-mutant security at this point?
We were actually saying that, my wife and I, as we were watching it, like they should be more prepared for this by now. Yeah, totally
Like the
agree.
Oval Office should have been like one of those rooms that just nullifies mutant powers or something because he just tore through everybody.
All right.
Um, so we get into one of the early scenes as well. Is we see Charles stop everybody like we saw in Days of Future Past. I thought that was an interesting, and it's so funny. Like in the timeline that we've been watching these, and then the timeline that exists with the movie, everything gets crossed up as to what came first. So it's like, oh yeah, he did this earlier in Days of, or no, he did this later in Days of Future Past. But
He didn't do that in X-Men, the first one, right?
not that I'm aware of. No, okay. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I was trying to think about like what's actually happening there when that happens. So he's like controlling the minds of all those people to just like freeze in place. But then it doesn't look like any of them are even breathing, which they should be breathing, right? Like to continue to live. It's not like he's frozen time literally. He's just having them freeze. I don't know.
He's just kind of shutting down their minds. But you're right. Yeah, they just have to completely freeze. And it also, he doesn't do that at other times where it seems like he should have been able to do that to, save himself. I mean, I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but later on when he gets trapped with Magneto,
right.
They start slowly filling the chamber with gas, and he looks and he like tries to go for the door, and he sees Cyclops fighting somebody. Like he should have just been able to freeze them all right there, right? And everybody would have been fine. But yeah.
Also, I was thinking like we see later on Magneto can like move a giant football stadium or whatever, and he's like like 30 feet from metal in this plastic prison or whatever. Like, it doesn't seem like that would be far enough away. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, this is just like nitpicky. Like, it's totally entertaining.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was like taking down my notes today, I was like, I'm really enjoying this movie, but as I look through my notes, it's all just like little nitpicky joke kind of things. Because I mean, it would probably be pretty boring if we just sat here like, yeah, I love it.
Right.
I thought there was right before Xavier freezes everybody, there was this scene where there's a little girl licking an ice cream cone, and then the mutant kid turns around and just sticks his tongue out. And it was just like, that whole scene felt unnecessary. It was just a forced way to show that there are more mutants in the world, I guess. But then to jump around again, they doubled down on that joke in the end of the movie, bringing this kid back to stick his tongue out at Stryker. Right. I thought it was just such an over-the-top, corny joke. I thought it was so weird that they decided to double down on it.
Yeah. The other thing I made a mental note of that we were actually talking about during the movie was like that scene when they're running away from the attack jet fighters or whatever in the X jet. Is that what it's called? X jet?
The Blackbird.
Blackbird.
Yeah, completely. I don't know. Completely out there.
And Storm makes all these giant like tornadoes and stuff to take out the planes.
Mm-hmm.
But then like Phoenix, Jean Grey, she like does her mental powers and it like makes one of the missiles like go slightly off course and explode, and everybody's like, "Are you okay? That was such like a tremendous exertion of power." And I was like, "What about the giant tornadoes? Like nobody's worried about Storm over exerting herself. Like why did they know that Jean Grey can like explode herself or whatever?" I don't know.
Yeah, no, I thought of that too. It's like they're getting attacked, but there's so many powers in this jet right now that they could use to immediately nullify this attack.
Right.
Storm, she summons those tornadoes, but also could have just like used a bolt of lightning to bring those jets down. Jean could have just froze the pilots and just made them land. You could have Nightcrawler teleport into the jet and pull the whatever. I mean, a lot of different ways to get out of that they chose not to do. I also thought it was interesting, kind of a interesting similarity between that and The Incredibles, when Violet is struggling to get her what am I looking for? Force field around the plane when their plane gets shot down. And that movie just came out a year after X2, which I thought was interesting.
But probably was well into animation by that point.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Good point.
So another one of the characters they introduced in this movie was Pyro, who I thought was actually really well done.
Well, Pyro has like one brief scene in the first movie, but he's a different actor.
Yeah, well, yeah. So they actually have Pyro, not just
Right, right.
background kid. Um, but yeah, I thought they did a really good job with his character. I thought he made a fun kind of side villain. I liked his small mini arc in this movie.
Yeah.
Kind of bothers me that he wasn't Australian. Seems like an easy thing to do, but Um, so
Yeah, that the whole gang of characters that escapes with Logan, Rogue, Bobby, Iceman, and Pyro, they make for an interesting group that all kind of bounce off each other pretty well.
yeah, that was one thing I liked about this movie too, is that where they all the X-Men movies really have a heavy focus on Wolverine, and this one does as well. But I like you said, I like that group that they put around him. I like the dynamic that they had with the other characters. It wasn't just Wolverine looking into his past. There was more going on there. And like I said, with Pyro, the other characters had their own arcs going on. It wasn't just they were there as side characters. They were so the whole thing with Bobby and his family finding out that he's a mutant. There was Bobby and Rogue's relationship playing out, and then there was Pyro slowly becoming, the villain that he is. Another scene I wanted to point out early in the movie was when Senator Kelly, we see him in the beginning, and he's talking to Stryker and starts walking away. Was there any doubt in anyone's mind that this is Mystique right off the bat? I mean,
Right.
we saw the whole thing in the first movie.
Yeah, that was my wife's comment when they showed his eyes changing. She
Yeah,
was like, for those who had forgotten the end of the
right.
previous film.
And which I guess, when these movies came out, it was 3 years later, but still, I think we remember that this character died in a
Right.
pretty memorable way in the first movie. So, um, one interesting little goof and then kind of an Easter egg in the same moment. So Mystique goes into Stryker's office and kind of steals some information from his computer, and pulls up a list of names. One of the names is obviously Eric Lencher, but it's spelled incorrectly. If you look at the credits, like his name there's an H in there that is missing on the computer. So thought that was a pretty funny little goof they had there.
And aren't there a bunch that you're probably about to bring this up, but there's a bunch of like other Easter eggs in that list too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there were a bunch. There was Remy LeBeau, which is Gambit. There was Jamie Madrox, which is Multiple Man. Both of the Maximoffs were on there. There was Silver Samurai, who we just saw in The Wolverine. Danny Moonstar and Sam Guthrie, who were in New Mutants. And then Kevin McTaggart, who was a mutant and is the son of Moira McTaggart, who was in the prequels, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, lots of fun little Easter eggs there. I think obviously the Maximoffs are probably the most compelling, especially knowing Quicksilver shows up later on. But they acknowledge, because it actually says Maximoff and then in parentheses 2, so it's not just Pietro, it's both of them. So they actually acknowledge that Wanda is existing in this universe. So thought that was pretty cool.
And then we also see Dr. Hank McCoy, but he's not played by Kelsey Grammer.
Right. Not played by Kelsey Grammer, and he's not blue. But then later on, he, in Last Stand, I believe, he tells Logan that he's been that way for a long time. So, again, more continuity issues there, as we expect at this point. And another thing I thought was pretty funny, Logan hands Bobby a soda for him to chill it for him, which I guess I don't know why it wasn't cold to begin with.
For that to happen.
Right, exactly. He several times in the movie freezes things with his hands, but feels the need to breathe into Logan's soda to chill it in that moment. I just thought, that's so funny. Like, he's already holding it. Why not?
Well, I feel like that's one of those things that sticks out more now in pandemic times. You're like, why did you breathe in my soda?
Probably.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Why does he have to do both? Or yeah.
So then we have the attack on the mansion from Stryker and his goons.
I love that scene. I think it's a great action scene. I love that they don't show Wolverine's claws until that moment where he needs them in the movie, because that's a great it's a great like withholding of what the audience wants and a
Yeah,
terrific payoff when it happens and he just straight up murders that guy. And I love the shot of him like when he turns around and you see the six claw holes in the refrigerator behind where the guy was standing.
yeah.
That's really well done, and that whole sequence is fantastic. The like berserker rage scene, attack on the mansion. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I thought it was funny. I agree 100%. I really enjoyed the whole action sequence. But I thought it was so funny because it starts off with Wolverine kind of sneaking up on guys and like silently killing them from behind, and then the very next cut, he's literally running down the hallway screaming at them, and then just jumping right at them. So it's like kind of abandon your strategy pretty quickly there. But sure, I mean that's the way Wolverine should be anyway. So I guess they got it right in the long run.
mm-hmm.
There was a different Kitty Pryde, as we mentioned from the first X-Men. And, Ellen Page eventually takes over the role later on. We do get introduced to Colossus, who was, I mean, pretty cool in this movie. But again, why is he not Russian? I don't understand why.
I think the accent thing went so wrong with Anna Paquin that they were just like, let them all be American, whatever. I guess Nightcrawler doesn't follow that rule though, because he is actually
Sure.
German or whatever. But this isn't the guy who plays Colossus in Deadpool, is it?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah, different actor. Um, so we both agree that we really like this action sequence. How did you feel about the like awkward meeting between Wolverine and Stryker?
I think that was fine. Like we've established at that point that Wolverine is so curious about his past that he would be tempted by just learning, like, even though this guy is clearly like a threat, he would be tempted to parlay with him just to learn about his own history, you know? So I wasn't bothered by that. Why is that
No,
awkward to
it
you?
just felt a little weird. You go from Wolverine, like you said, in that berserker rage, just kind of stab first, ask questions later, and then he immediately stops when he hears Stryker's voice, which I guess I get. Like you said, he's always curious. He wants to learn about his past. I think what set it over the top for me is when they're on the opposite sides of the wall of ice and they like put their hands up against.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, that's a little too much. Like, what is happening here? But yeah, aside from that, not too bad. I will say, I think Stryker was actually a great villain in this movie. I think they gave him like a really dark past. He had, he was just kind of that menacing villain without, he's not the guy that's going to get into the fight himself, but he has
Right.
everything planned out.
Yeah,
And
you can't go wrong with Brian Cox, the original Hannibal Lecter. You know, he's a great actor. So great casting there.
yeah, and I mean, everything with his son, who again they drastically changed from the comics, but it's okay when it's when it's a character that's not like it's not like they drastically changed Wolverine from the comics.
So what's the deal with Stryker's son in the comics?
He has just like energy emission, like he just shoots off, kind of like Cyclops, I guess, but not from his
Okay.
eyes. So obviously, very different power
And
set.
what's his mutant name?
I
Do I
don't
know
think
it?
he has one.
Okay.
If there is one that I've never seen it, I
Okay.
just from doing a quick look around for him today. But yeah, everything I saw was just refers to him as Jason Stryker. So, um, getting back to what we were talking about a little bit before, that scene where Charles and Magneto kind of get gassed. And actually, oh no, it's after that because they took Charles away, but they left Magneto. So I've always liked the way Magneto escapes
Yeah,
from there.
that's a great scene too. The whole thing with Mystique seducing that security guard in the bar is really funny in like an organic way. And then yeah, that whole following scene because I remembered, like, I knew it was coming, that guy comes to like a very gory end. And I still don't think it quite makes sense that he doesn't set off the metal detector, like, but
Right.
whatever, it's fine. And it's like so neat how he uh, pulls all those little particles of metal out of his blood. But that moment is equivalent to me with the moment at the end where Magneto pulls all the pins out of the hand grenades of all those soldiers. I remember the audience just applauding when that happened in the movie.
Yeah, there are two lines in this movie that I always remembered, and I before watching it today, I mean, I remembered the movie, but there was a lot that that kind of got blocked out. Um, but too much iron in your blood. That's one line that I just forever remembered. And then so they say you're the bad guy, and then Magneto's response is that what they say? For some reason, that line always stuck with me too. I
Yeah,
really like
that's a
that
good
scene
line.
with Pyro. Um,
Yeah, Ian McKellen has some great moments in this movie for sure.
oh, for sure, yeah, absolutely. Him and Patrick Stewart, even though he's under mind control for a good portion of the movie, I think still does a
Yeah.
fantastic job, as you would expect from those two. By the way, I don't know why this came to me after we were watching like our sixth X-Men movie and with the 14th Cerebro scene that we've watched. But I'm looking at Cerebro, and I was just like, all right, let's just retheme Spaceship Earth, make it Cerebro, make it narrated by Patrick Stewart. I think we'll be good to go. Oh,
I
yeah.
can I can imagine some Disney purists being upset. Maybe they could do it for a seasonal kind of thing.
No,
Summer of
I don't think
superheroes.
anybody will have any problem with that. I think that um, so after the whole Blackbird crash and everything, they end up outside Alkali Lake, the whole facility from Stryker.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the other funny thing about that is how lucky they were that Magneto was exactly where they were crashing.
yes, because as we established earlier, when he was imprisoned, like 15 feet is his range for moving metal because
Right.
he couldn't get to that door before. So, um, yeah, I like that too. Um, uh, yeah, that I agree. It's kind of silly. Like they were so lucky that I mean, he could have just caught them in a baseball mitt right there.
But
But
it works in a comic booky kind of way, I
yeah,
think. Like,
yeah, it was this cool moment of like, uh, you know, oh well, I guess Magneto is saving them now, and they're going to work together. So it was that cool moment, as it's
mm,
happening.
yeah.
So eventually they make their plan. They go into attack Stryker's facility, and it's Mystique disguised as Logan going out there. And he just, or she, I guess, just screams out for Stryker. And he looks at the camera, sees that it's Logan. And he goes, "Oh, okay, all right. So let me send out 6 guards with handguns, thinking that's going to be enough to handle Logan, given what he just did back in the mansion." I thought that was an interesting choice. Um, but then we do get another really cool action scene with Mystique, which Mystique has been a really cool character throughout all of these movies. They used her pretty well, I think. The only issue I had with her in this movie specifically is her like specific theme music that hit every time she transformed back into like her blue look.
Right.
Uh, I think we heard it like 4 or 5 times throughout this movie, and I just started to get sick of it. Um, and then one thing we talked about a little bit before, I don't remember which movie. I guess Apocalypse, I think, was the first one or the second one where where young Nightcrawler came back.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about his powers and what he can and can't do, because in the opening scene, attacking the president, he very easily teleports from one room to another behind closed doors. And then he makes a big deal out of it, saying, "I can't teleport where if I can't see, I might end up in a wall." Just some more inconsistency there. It was a little weird.
How do you feel about the sound effect that they chose to replicate the word "bamf"?
I actually kind of liked it. That is kind of what I always had in my mind. Um, I think it would have been funny if they had it more like Banff. Like if I
Yeah.
don't know how else you could have done it,
What does
but
"bamf" sound like? Yeah.
yeah.
What does
Or like
"thwip" sound like?
Wolverine's claws going snick.
Snicked. Yeah, yeah.
A couple other characters that appeared in this movie. We had Jubilee again. I didn't realize how many little appearances she had
Yeah,
before
yeah.
showing up in Apocalypse.
Jubilee is always a teenager in the X-Men
She
movie.
is. She's a teenager in like the 80s and then the 2000s as well. So I don't know. But another one I think they did a really, really good job with was Lady Deathstrike, and that's the Stryker's guard of sorts with the adamantium claws. Yeah, she is one of those characters that you see in the comic or in the cartoon, and you're just like, I don't see that translating well to to a movie, to a live action movie. But I think they did a really good job with her. I think they obviously had to change her look. She would have looked a little bit crazy with her comic book look, but I think they did a good job, and they had a really good fight sequence again with Wolverine. Like we saw his fight scene with Mystique in the first movie, and then he gets a good one with Lady Deathstrike in this one. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, what action there is in this movie is pretty well choreographed. Better than the first one, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Aside from that Mystique Wolverine fight, which I thought was pretty good. Aside from that, there wasn't much that really stands out in memory. So the whole Stryker's whole plan is using Jason to control Charles, to use Cerebro to kill all the mutants. Jason himself being a mutant, controlling Charles to kill all the mutants. Wouldn't that have immediately stopped the attack as soon as it started? We see all the mutants kind of get disabled and just drop to the ground. But I guess for some reason, maybe because he's in Cerebro, that's housing them. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened there. So after everything, after they escape the facility and everything, they're on their way out. Wolverine has this final face-off with Stryker, and as I mentioned before, he's awkwardly holding this kid, and they double down on the tongue joke. But it's weird because it feels like that was like this cool, powerful scene for like Wolverine to leave Stryker there to die. And then it's kind of like undermined by the fact that he's holding this little kid in his arms the entire time. It just felt like it was weirdly done. Am I alone in that? Is that just like?
Yeah, I see what you're talking about, but I think they did that so Stryker could, because he calls the kid like a little creature or something. Like,
yeah, he says like that creature you have in your arms. Or something.
And I think it's just for him to like double down on being a jerk, so we don't feel bad when Wolverine leaves him to die.
That's fair. Yeah. All right.
I don't know. That's just my theory.
So they kind of, as I mentioned, other characters getting their arc throughout this movie, and Jean Grey had her whole arc with the Phoenix is coming. You kept seeing the fire in her eyes, quite literally. Was there any doubt like that? Like when they did her whole death scene, I thought it was actually really well done. I thought the emotion came across really well, but it just kind of, I know I'm talking about a movie that came out in 2003 that I've seen probably 10 times since then. I remember watching this in the theater and thinking, all right, well, she's not dead. Like Jean Grey is going to come back in the next movie. Did you have any different feeling about that?
No, I think even though I didn't grow up on X-Men comics, I knew about the Dark Phoenix storyline, and at that point I feel like in the cultural zeitgeist people kind of knew that in comic books, whenever like Superman died in the early 90s and then he came back like a year later, like people knew that no comic book characters usually ever stayed dead. Although I feel like in the movies it's been more often that a character will die and stay dead so far. We've had, Bucky Barnes and stuff has come back, but like, I feel like, I don't think they're going to bring back Tony Stark. I think like death is going to be a little bit more permanent in the MCU than it was in Marvel Comics, but I do remember the reaction to that in the theater, and I think people generally knew that she was going to come back as Phoenix. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you could go into that movie with no comic book knowledge whatsoever, know nothing about these characters, just watch her arc throughout this movie and think like, okay, well, yeah, she's not dead. She's coming back. Like we saw what was happening with her. She's going to come back. So, again, I think the scene was really well done. I thought for all the hate that Cyclops gets, I think James Marsden did a really good job with his scenes in that instance. So,
although like, I've only seen X-Men 3 once in the theater, but I remember that particular setup having the worst payoff in X-Men 3. Like, they really botched that one with the Phoenix stuff.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. Maybe Last Stand will be our next X-Men movie we do on here. But yeah, as
I would actually be curious to watch that again because I remember just hating it so much.
yes, exactly. I would too, to be honest. We kind of, for the most part, agreed that X2 was our favorite and X3 was our least favorite. So
Yeah.
yeah, it would be interesting to see that one. Hopefully that comes to Disney Plus. I can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, hopefully that comes to Disney Plus. Couple scenes at the very end. The X-Men give a very horror movie type entrance on the president during his speech there. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So we were talking about this as well while it was happening, and the whole point of them doing that. First of all, I wasn't clear on exactly what was happening again. Uh, Nick Morgan does not like X2. Like, okay, so Professor X froze time again for the people in the Oval Office except for the president.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden, all the X Men are there. So did he again freeze time for the president and everybody like came in and then they unfroze time for him? Like, or can Nightcrawler teleport everybody in there all at once? I don't think so,
Well,
right?
so he could. Then this is how I was playing it out in my head. Was actually Nightcrawler teleports them all in, but they would all have to be like grouped together, and then they all just kind of scattered to their respective spots that they're in. It's like those jokes when like Batman is like trying to sneak away from Commissioner Gordon, but he catches them as he's getting. That's what I imagine. Just the president's like, why are you guys just scrambling around?
Right. But then like the other funny thing about that scene is that the point of them doing it is to convince the president that the mutants are not, or that some mutants are not a threat, right? That there are good mutants, but the
Right.
whole thing feels so threatening to me.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't it feel like we'll be watching? Like, oh
Right.
god, like
Yeah.
you could kill
Why
me
does
so
Storm
easily.
have to like blacken out the skies for this to happen? Like everything's so ominous.
Right.
um, did you notice how they call Fox Marvel movies Marvel Legacy films on Disney Plus?
You know, he told me about that the other day, and I totally forgot to look. And even when I went to watch this movie, I just scrolled down to new to Disney Plus, and it was just right there. So
Yeah,
I haven't seen this what he's talking about yet.
no, that is interesting. I mean, I guess I don't know how else they would go about labeling that, but
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that they have to differentiate between MCU and non MCU. So I guess that's the best way to do it. And I compared it to what they did with Star Wars, which is like everything that's not canon anymore is just called Legends. So this is kind of like the equivalent of that.
is there anything on Disney Plus that's not canon with Star Wars, or you just mean like in
Uh,
general?
I just mean in general, but
Okay,
I
okay.
bel- I want to say some of the animated stuff, the Lego animated stuff,
Oh,
might not
right,
be
right, right.
canon.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Um, Only other scene I wanted to touch on real quick was the very last shot of panning back over Alkali Lake, and you see the Phoenix kind of just like very like shadow, just a shadow going over the water. I thought
Yeah.
that was really well done. They kept hammering us over the head the entire movie with the fire in her eyes. So I thought that was very subtly done. Like
Yeah.
it's still obvious, you could still see it, but not, they didn't just show a giant firebird, flying in from space. So I
And
thought that was,
if this had come out 5 years later, that would have been a post credits tease instead
oh
of
yeah.
pre credits. But yeah,
Yeah, you might have actually even gotten the full Firebird in the post credits,
yeah.
but yeah, no. So I like the way that it was done. Do you have any other thoughts on this movie?
Um, not off the top of my head. I mean, I just still really like it. I mean, what a great cast, and it's well directed. Well, I don't know, the everything looks really nice. It's well shot. Action's well choreographed. So yeah, I don't. Other than the minor nitpicks that we had, I really don't have
Right.
any complaints.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we poked a lot of fun at this movie, but I agree. I think it does hold up for being. And my wife and I were just talking about this too. 2003. This movie came out more than 17 years ago. Or yeah, 17 years ago, and I mean, I remember seeing it in the theater, so it was just like it kind of snuck up on me. That when I look back, I expected to see like 2008, 9, something like that, but nope, 2003.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
So I actually saw this movie in costume. I forgot to
Oh,
bring this up, but I had grown out my beard. I think probably a little bit more than this, and I just like shaved this, and I shaved this, and I borrowed my friend's leather jacket, and I had little plastic claws, and I tried to get my hair to do and I was thinner back then, but I tried to get my hair to do the double
I could totally see it.
point there. But yeah, I sat there in the Chinese theater opening night,
Oh wow,
dressed as Logan for this one.
that's awesome. I'm pretty sure I was wearing a T-shirt very similar to this one at like the Hamilton, New Jersey AMC 24. So not nearly as exciting.
Oh, and then like I can't see without my glasses, so when the movie started, it was Logan wearing these type of glasses.
Um, so yeah, that's it for X-Men 2. We don't have another. Like I said, maybe Last Stand will come up, and we'll end up doing another
Well,
X-Men.
they seem to be like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because of deals with other streaming services, but they seem to be bringing them out every once in a while. We'll get another X-Men movie, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting to do Dark Phoenix too. I know everybody's excited about that one.
Yeah.
But so our next Laughing Place Movie Club, I believe, will be next week, and that will be Clouds, I believe, is the plan. So keep an eye out for that. And then, of course, this Wednesday we'll have more Marvel time. So those of you who are Marvel fans out there, you can come back and check out all the Marvel news and Marvel comics coming out this week. But thanks, Mike, for joining me to talk about X2.
Of course. Yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.